Robert Harrison sat alone at the corner table of Marcello's, the upscale Italian restaurant he visited every Thursday evening. At 52, he had built an empire in commercial real estate, but somewhere along the way he had forgotten to build a life. The restaurant hummed with conversation and laughter. Families celebrated birthdays. Couples held hands across candle-lit tables. Robert focused on his pasta primavera, trying not to notice the emptiness of the chair across from him. He was nearly finished when he heard them. Two small voices speaking almost in unison. "Excuse me, sir." Robert looked up to find two little girls standing beside his table. They couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Identical twins with blonde curls pulled back in matching ponytails. They wore simple white dresses that had seen better days, clean but faded from many washings. "May we have your leftovers, please?" The question hung in the air. Robert set down his fork, genuinely startled. In all his years of dining at fine restaurants, no one had ever asked him such a thing. "Your leftovers," one twin repeated softly, her blue eyes serious and hopeful. "If you're not taking them home?" Robert glanced around the restaurant. Near the entrance, he spotted a young woman in a cream-colored sundress. She stood perfectly still, watching her daughters with an expression that broke his heart. It was the look of someone trying to be brave while carrying unbearable weight. He turned back to the girls. They stood with their hands clasped together, waiting patiently. There was no shame in their faces, only a quiet dignity that seemed far too mature for children so young. "What are your names?" Robert asked gently. "I'm Emma," said the girl on the left. "I'm Lily," said her sister. "Well, Emma and Lily, I have a better idea." Robert smiled. "Why don't you and your mother join me? We can order something fresh and hot." The twins exchanged glances, then looked back toward their mother. The woman was already moving forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Girls, come here right now," she said quietly but firmly. "I'm so sorry, sir." "They shouldn't have bothered you." "They're no bother at all," Robert said, standing. "Please, I insist. I was just thinking how lonely it is to eat dinner by oneself." The woman hesitated, her eyes meeting his. Robert saw it all in that moment. The exhaustion, the struggle, the fierce love that kept her moving forward despite everything. He also saw something else. Those eyes. They reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place who. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I appreciate your kindness, but we couldn't possibly—" "Please," Robert interrupted gently. "It would mean a great deal to me, truly." Sarah looked at her daughters, then back at Robert. Something in his face must have convinced her because she nodded slowly. "Just this once," she said. They settled around the table. Emma and Lily sat up straight in their chairs, their eyes wide as they looked at the menu. Robert ordered them mac and cheese with chicken tenders. Sarah initially protested, but Robert waved her off kindly. "Tell me about yourselves," he said, once the waiter had left. The story came out slowly. Sarah was a visiting nurse, working long hours to support her daughters after her husband had passed away 2 years ago. She worked for an agency that sent her to different homes across the city, caring for elderly patients who needed help. "My mother was a nurse," Robert found himself saying. "She worked the night shift at County General for 30 years. "That must have been hard on your family," Sarah said softly. "It was just the two of us," Robert replied. "She did what she had to do. I understand that now better than I did then." The food arrived. Robert watched as the twins ate carefully, using their napkins, saying please and thank you. Sarah had raised them well, despite everything. "May I ask you something?" Robert said to Sarah. "Your eyes." "There's something familiar about them," Sarah smiled sadly. "People have said that before. I suppose I have common features." But it nagged at Robert throughout the meal. Those eyes. Where had he seen them? As they talked, Robert learned that Sarah's car had broken down that morning. She'd had to take 2 buses to get to her patient's home, which was near this restaurant. The girls had been at a neighbor's house all day. By the time Sarah picked them up and they caught the bus here, intending to walk to another bus stop, the girls were hungry. She'd meant to feed them crackers from her purse, but had forgotten them at work. "They saw you through the window," Sarah explained, her voice thick with emotion. "They said you looked kind. I told them absolutely not, but they slipped away from me. I'm glad they did, Robert said simply. After dinner, Robert insisted on calling them a car service. As they waited outside, Emma and Lily each held one of Sarah's hands. They looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Mr. Harrison," Sarah said, "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," Robert replied. "You've given me the best evening I've had in years." He gave Sarah his business card. "If you ever need anything," he said, "a reference, help with your car, anything at all, please call." Sarah took the card with trembling hands. "You've been so kind." As the car pulled away, Emma and Lily waved from the back window. Robert stood on the sidewalk long after they'd disappeared, feeling something shift inside his chest. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. Those eyes kept haunting him. Finally, at 2 in the morning, he went to his study and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a shoebox he hadn't looked at in years. He found the photograph near the bottom. It was faded and creased. A young woman with dark hair smiled at the camera, holding a baby. On the back, in his mother's handwriting, "Robert, age 6 months, with Jessica, 1972. Jessica." His mother's best friend from nursing school. They'd been inseparable until Jessica had moved away when Robert was still a baby. His mother had lost touch with her. Robert studied the photograph. Jessica's eyes. Sarah's eyes. They were the same. The next morning, Robert hired a private investigator. It took 3 days to confirm what his heart already knew. Sarah Mitchell was Jessica's granddaughter. Jessica had passed away 5 years ago, but not before telling her family stories about her dear friend Margaret. Robert's mother, who had also passed years ago, the two best friends had lost touch, geography and busy lives pulling them apart. But their grandchildren had found each other, drawn together by 2 hungry little girls and an act of simple kindness. Robert sat in his office, looking at the report, and wept. For his mother, for the friendship that had been lost, for all the lonely years he'd spent building an empire while forgetting what mattered. He called Sarah that evening. "I have something important to tell you," he said. "It's about our grandmothers." When he explained, Sarah cried. They talked for hours, sharing memories passed down through generations, marveling at the impossible coincidence that had brought them together. "It wasn't coincidence," Sarah said finally. "It was them. Somehow they brought us together." In the months that followed, Robert became part of their lives. He helped Sarah get a reliable car. He set up college funds for Emma and Lily. But more than that, he showed up. To birthday parties, to school plays, to Sunday dinners. For the first time in decades, Robert had a family. Not through blood, but through something stronger. Through kindness. Through connection. Through 2 little girls brave enough to ask a stranger for his leftovers. On Thanksgiving, as Robert sat surrounded by laughter and love, Emma climbed into his lap,